Welcome to another episode of the Impel podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Leon. Today I have with my fellows, this is Maurice, and y'all know Larry already.
What's up?
And today is just a Father's Day weekend, so we're going to talk about fathers, things like that.
Definitely.
Reese, how many kids you have, man?
Yeah, I got two, man. My oldest is my daughter, Sophia. She is 7. She turns 8 in July, and July 27th. And I have a 6-year-old son. His name is Alexander Maurice.
All right.
He's 6. And we actually have another one. My wife and I just found out.
That's what's up, man.
Yeah, another, about a week or two ago.
Congratulations.
That we're having
about a week ago?
third,
Yeah. Congratulations,
yeah.
man.
So,
that's good timing, man.
we've
good timing.
been married for 11 years. And 11
Was
years.
that your plan, though, to have a kid by Father's Day?
No, it
have one
just kind
pop
of
up?
worked out. Like,
That's what's up.
The due date is until like January, so
Yeah.
we got some time to wait. But yeah,
To try and get ready.
Yeah, we've been wanting another one for a while. Just not sure what that looked like. You're gonna get settled into a norm. Like I know what 2 kids is like one-on-one. You know what I mean? Me and my wife.
Yeah.
Now it's gonna
Change
be
the
like,
dynamic a little bit.
hit me with the triangle,
Every
right?
time, yeah. Every time you add one.
right.
Change the dynamic a little bit. It gets a little more interesting.
Yeah.
Each kid, man. So,
Yeah.
because I got 5 of them.
Okay.
Got two girls and 3 boys.
Okay.
My girls are older and my boys a little younger. So it gets different every time, man. Every time you think you got to figure it out, they switch it up on you. They hit you with a crossover.
Yeah, I know that feeling now, man.
Yeah. It's fun.
Well, I only got 2, so
Okay.
that's all I'm having.
Because you got 2 girls, right?
Yeah, 2 girls.
Yeah. How old are your girls?
15 and 12.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's that age right there, though.
That's the statesman right here.
Yeah.
Man,
I'm
that's
done.
that age when they start looking at the world with different eyes, and they start getting more curious. Like, oh, what's going on over there? Like, because they can see so much more from a older perspective.
Sure.
It ain't all about Disney movies no more with them now. You know what I mean? Like, they growing up now. So
I think, that's real. Like, one of the things that my wife and I try to think through is, it is true that when your kids get older, they're going to be investigating the world in different kinds of ways.
Facts.
But our kids investigate the world from a young age, too. Like, as you look at my son, he's digging in the dirt. And, he's investigating the world as he sees it.
Let me look at it this way. Let me put
Yeah.
it this way. So as your kids start growing up,
Yeah.
like their perspective changed from that very childlike imagination.
Sure.
And now they start becoming into like more inquisitive. Like what's going on? Like what's already happening in the world? Instead of them putting their imagination into the world, now they starting to be influenced. And that's where you got to be careful at.
That is true.
Yeah.
One of the things we do, we have a category, these things that we use called form and fill.
Okay.
So, form and fill is basically this. Like, in the Bible, we see God creating the world or speaking the world into existence. The Hebrew term there is ex nihilo, out of nothing.
Okay.
Right? But he doesn't place whatever's going to live in a place without the place being there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So he forms a category, forms a place like dry land. That means the beasts of the field, the humans, et cetera, going to live on the land. The birds, they're going to need the air.
Yeah.
The fish need the water. But you don't see the fish before you get the water. You don't see the animals before
They're just
you see
not
the
in the
ground.
void.
Right. So form and fill is basically, we want it for our kids in particular, the way we break it down is like, we want to give them categories. We want to form a category of something for them.
Yeah.
And then over time, as they mature, expand that category, fill that category.
I like that.
With things that will be appropriate for them. So they have a context for male-female relationship because they see me and my wife together. They see me kiss my wife before. Like, my wife's were kind of prudish. She's like, I don't want to kiss in front of the kids. I'm like, no, it's important for us to do that because we're giving them a category. And my daughter went to school and was saying she likes this boy and all that. And I was
learning,
like, oh
man.
my gosh.
Yeah.
But then I started thinking, she's trying to reproduce what she's seeing. But she doesn't have a category for how that looks as a 6-year-old.
Like that.
So what we've done is
that.
tell my wife, we have to do this in front of them.
Yeah.
Because if we don't do it in front of them, we let other people fill them with categories and things that we haven't given them.
I like that.
Definitely.
And so we try to let my kids see me kiss my wife. And it's like, oh, you kiss mommy. It's like, yeah, that's true. But you'll never see daddy kiss any other person.
Right.
Like my son see me like hug my wife. You'll never see daddy hug or kiss another woman in this way.
Yeah. Right.
Because this relationship is exclusive between me and my wife. You'll never see me love another child like I love you. You'll never see me pick up another little girl and kiss her on the cheek like I'm doing with you. You are mine, I'm yours. But as they get older, we're filling those categories that we're filling the category with things that are appropriate for them. And that goes down to media, that goes down to movies we watch, books we read with them, places we take them to. And then sometimes you can't help because you can't expose your kids, protect your kids from everything.
Right.
But it does mean that if something is they're confronted with and they have the room and freedom to ask me, what about that thing? Because they don't have a category for it. And then that allows me to like gently move the categories open, open that file cabinet, and put bigger files in it as they experience life.
Hey, that's important, man. That's huge. I like the way you explain that, man. That's dope. I was thinking about I'm a piggyback off that a little bit too, as far as how it relates to for fatherhood in general.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm gonna be honest, I feel like over time we've complicated fatherhood.
Yeah.
And
what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I'm about to ask. What do you mean by that?
We've complicated as in we try to be superheroes for our kids. You know, like we try to sometimes solve their problems. We try to sometimes, we stop the threats before they even see it type of thing. But to piggyback what you're saying is, for having those categories, I think that it's important for your child to see you for who you are.
Yeah.
Like as a human, because it's relatable. You can't be Superman out here all the time.
Right.
And for one thing, it's not relatable because your kids don't know anything about some indestructible human from another planet. You know what I mean? That's not relatable to them. They need to see you for who you are. They need to see you struggle. They need to see you fail. They need to see you get knocked down. But more importantly, get back up. They need to see how resilient you are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Now, did you go ahead? No, go ahead. Finish.
No, but I was gonna say, like, when you having those categories for them, like that also gives them that input.
Sure.
So okay, like they're in a category now.
Yeah.
This is the category. We're in a category where
stage of maturity.
Exactly. Like they're seeing, okay, this is XYZ scenario taking place. Now, how do I conduct myself within this category?
Yeah.
And so you as a man in fatherhood, stop trying to always overly protect your kids by doing the work for them. Yeah. Like they need to see you, and you need to put in the work to show them. I'm not saying put them in a situation that's too much for them. Appropriately do it.
Sure.
Like for instance, yesterday I took my boys 14 and 13. Took them to go change my truck tire. Things like that. They need to start, because I never had the chance that my dad taught me to do that. I wasn't as close with my dad like that. I didn't know my dad that well. And so there are things where I look at myself like, okay, I need to show my kids how to do these things too. I know how to do it. I need to pass it down. Right. Right. And so when you're talking about having those categories for your kids, okay, now we're in the category. How do we handle it inside the categories? Type of things. They need to see that. They need to see you struggle.
Because they're engaging the world, right? You know
exactly.
What I mean? Like one of the things that we do, for example, here's a very practical one, right? We live in the year of our Lord, 2023.
Yeah.
But
you say
in the year of our Lord.
Our Lord, okay.
That's what AD means, the year of our Lord.
Right,
you know what I mean? But one of the things that we can't always shield our kids from is sexuality. Right?
Yeah.
We live in a culture that is
huge.
constantly thrusting, sexuality towards us. No. Pause. You feel me? But no, what I mean, you took me off guard with that. But what I mean by that is that these things are constantly being promoted in the culture.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
And so
when you say promoted, what you mean promoted?
I mean, for example, you see
it's that with the music.
Right, for music, right? Like media, you see Disney, for example. There's the new Little Mermaid is African American woman. But they see a certain image of the body, right? They see her kissing. They're like, you can become a human with love's true first kiss or something like that. But our kids, if we don't give them, going back to that form and fill paradigm, we have to kind of like create these categories for our kids. But one of the things that we do, and this is not to promote myself or us as like this, I'm just talking about my life, our lives. But one of the things we do is we tell our kids about gender and sexuality, but we don't say, this is because of the culture, blah, 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 blah. We don't give them all of that. But we'll say, you are a boy, Alex, my son. It works out for us because we have one boy, one girl at this point.
Yeah.
you are a boy, you are a girl, Sophia. Alex, you're a boy. And this is what boys do. Boys have a penis. We don't say pee, his wee.
Right.
We say you have a penis and she has a vagina. We don't say you're a lady purse or whatever. Like we use anatomically correct terms when we
you talk to them respectfully.
Respectfully. But what that's doing is going back to that form and fill piece, is giving her a category for the body. So if somebody was at school, this never happened. But let's say somebody was to touch my daughter or my son inappropriately, and they try to report it. They're not saying, "Oh, he touched my wiener" or whatever. It's like, well, what are you talking? We want to have direct language. He touched my penis.
It's clear communication. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And then over time, as they get old, like now, and certain things we can't predict. Like we have kids now, we're expecting another baby.
Yeah,
and they see mommy's stomach growing. It's like, the question is, where do babies come from?
Facts.
So what we've done is, like, we gave them a category for just our experience.
Yeah.
Mommy and daddy love each other. Mommy and daddy sleep in a room together, in the same bed together, and we shut our door.
Yeah.
Like, who comes in our room? You can't even our kids don't just walk in my
But see, this is dope.
Let me ask you this. Where did you get that teaching from? Did you learn it from your parents or?
No, my parents. No, sir.
Parents, okay.
But
that's what I was going to touch on. That's what I was going to say.
Where I got that from, though, really is just from the form and fill piece, Genesis 1, from the Bible. But I think it's important for us to. So I'm a Christian, and so as a Christian, I think we need to be engaging the world as it is, not as we intend it to be.
Okay.
And so what I mean by that is, like, the world is a certain way. God has made us gendered beings. Like, we reflect what God is like through our gender differences. And so, like, for example, with my daughter, we talk about where the babies come from. There's a book we read with them called there's a series. The first book is called The Story of Me. And it just is a story about a family that has 3 kids and mom's pregnant again. And so the mother and father in the story is explaining to the kids, this is how I got pregnant. Not, oh, me and dad had sex. It's like, but they're explaining, okay, my stomach grows because of this. Like, the baby comes out through the vagina. And my kids already have remember I said a moment ago, my kids already have a category for vagina because you are a girl. Girls have a vagina. So it's like, oh, mommy's a girl. So, it kind of demystifies it, so to speak.
Thanks,
it allows them to have that category. Now, as they get older, we're not, like, bringing things upon them like, you have sex by doing this. Like,
because and
does that make sense?
Jump forward a little bit in the future, that is completely how a lot of the toxic concepts are born. Because when you think about it, like I'm gonna be honest, man, my parents never just broke down, mature things like that to me when I was a kid.
So I don't think none of us.
And how did you end up learning it though? In the streets, you end up learning it the wrong way. And then once you get older, now you got to unlearn some of this stuff because you're gonna try to teach it, to your kids, man, the best way you can, but not the horrible ways that you've learned. And so you start getting that self-awareness, man.
There's a statement I was sharing with you a moment ago is we become what we behold. Like you put something before a person, and over time they become the thing that they're beholding regularly, right?
Yeah.
And so the Bible uses the language of, like, idols. Excuse me. And it says those who make idols become like them.
Yeah.
You
copy it.
Right, like you become blind, you become dumb, you're not thinking well, you're not hearing well, because what can an idol do? It's like a figure that's made out of some other created thing, and it can't talk to you, so you don't speak well. Like it doesn't hear you, so you stop listening well. It doesn't see you, so you stop seeing the world a certain way.
Okay.
And so in a similar way, though, we want to put life-giving things in front of our children so that they can become like that.
I like that.
You know what I mean?
Like
and
that.
so
like that.
You asked about, like, where my parents, man.
Yeah, I was actually, what did you learn from your father?
Yeah. So I grew up in a single parent home, but with my dad.
Okay.
My mom was on crack real bad when I was a kid. The crack epidemic swept through the cities.
Yeah.
Really everywhere in the black community and communities at large. But my mom was on drugs real bad when I was a kid, and my dad and her were never married. And when they separated, it put me and my brother in this awkward place because my mom and dad have kids. My mom had kids before her and my father got together.
Right.
And but my dad was like, these are my two. Like, you go do what you're gonna do. And she ended up, so her story is her story, but she ended up, going in a different route.
Yeah.
And but my dad, growing up, he was always, at one point he was real guarded of us, me and my brother. Mm-hmm. But then, you can guard your kids as much as you can from things outside of the home. Mm-hmm. But how do you guard them from what you model from in front of them in the home? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, so my dad has 6 kids from 4 different women.
Okay.
And I grew up with a very, like, even if he never said, he modeled, like being a man is about getting these women, getting money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So over time, like, I think I just went in the opposite direction, saying I don't want to be like that, because I spoke about, if you will, or experienced the negative side effects of that kind of life as a child.
Right.
When my other, like, this is kind of funny, like, I have a brother that's a year older than me. He went down the path of my dad. I went down a different path. Yeah. And then I became a Christian when I was 16, and that completely changed my worldview.
Yeah.
Is that when you knew that you said you didn't want to go same direction?
Yeah, I just remember, this is a bad example, but, if my dad ever sees this, forgive me. Me and my dad got into a fight with this guy, and it was just terrible. My dad was getting handled, but it was terrible, bro. And I remember coming home and like watching him kind of nurse his wounds, and that gave me some trauma as well, seeing the person, only person you look up to in this vulnerable state. Yeah. But I remember thinking, like, if this kind of a life, like, leads to this, I don't want that. And like, there were so many different things that I kept thinking, like, man, I don't want that. Like, I want this. I don't want that. I want this. Yeah. And I think in some ways, like, I had different examples, because my next door neighbor, husband and wife, they had four kids together. And I just remember seeing that, like, I want that. Like,
It just amazes me listening to you, how you knew this stuff early on at an early age, that what you want and didn't want.
Yeah. I mean, I think that when you grow up in a they say that we are products of the bullets we get hit with and the ones we dodge. Right. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And in a similar way, like, there's things I couldn't escape about my upbringing. Right. And this is no disrespect to my dad. Love my dad. I look up to my dad in a lot of ways. He taught me a ton of things growing up. Mm-hmm. I respect my dad, but my dad is not Jesus. You know what I mean? Like, and so in a very real way, I learned to honor him. Mm-hmm. But honoring a person doesn't mean you always have to agree with them. Right. And so I think I had to learn. It took me a long time to learn that. You know what I mean? In terms of me and my dad's relationship. But I just remember thinking, like, I just don't want to be that kind of a guy. Like, I remember. So I had not had sex until I got married, and this is not because I'm just this, like, holy roller. No. Wait
a minute. How old were you?
I was 24 when I got married. I became a believer when I was a Christian when I was 16. Yeah. Wow. And but I remember, like, my brothers asking me, was I gay?
But that's a part of that toxic, man. That's a part of that.
You better be gay, because they knew that I had a lot of women were girls at the time. Were attracted to me, and like, I would always be friends with a lot of women. Yeah. That's one thing that happens when you grow up in a single parent home. Usually, the parent that's missing leaves a gap that the child tries to fill in other ways.
Oh yeah, of course.
So I grew up without a mother, so I was just naturally attracted to just being around a bunch of women. Yeah, but it wasn't because I wanted that I was gay or anything like that. It was they were giving me some mother. Yeah, I was looking for something. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I feel you.
And so I remember thinking that, like, man, I just saw that the different, like, beefs that my pops would get into with different women. But I also saw, like, some of the other things too. It's like, I never could go home to a regular, consistent person, because I remember, this is terrible. When my dad would date different women, me and my brother, consciously or unconsciously, consciously, we'd be like, this one's gonna last. It's like my relationship with my pops was like microwave. I think this is gonna take 10 minutes.
That's a little common, man. Once you looking at things, man, and you like, when something is headed for a brick wall.
Yeah, she just a bedroom buddy.
Oh man,
you know what I mean? This ain't mom's. But your father, that father or mother, single parent home situation, usually wants the child to respect their partner.
Of course.
But sometimes, like, my heart became really hardened to that. Like, yo, like, you not my mother though. Like, you not my mom's. Yeah, you my dad's girlfriend, but you not my mom.
Yeah.
But I didn't think at the time I didn't understand that my dad was trying to. He was missing something too, right?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. And there's we got to be careful of that too, man, because as parents, when we don't have, what we need,
right, and
we're trying to look for it, but we still got our kids, though.
Yeah.
They become a collateral damage.
That's true.
And not intentionally,
right.
And I think this is why, for me personally, it self-awareness is huge with me. It's huge.
Sure.
And I have a child too with special needs. And so my child has taught me so much more about myself.
Yeah, that's true.
And the reason why is because you have to get out of your own way so you can help your child. You know what I mean? Like,
facts.
You have to, because you don't want to become another obstacle for your child.
Yeah.
And so when you have a child that needs you in ways, you got to be there 100%.
Right,
Right. And so you got to figure out what's wrong with you, man. You got unresolved traumas? Okay, you need to take care of that. It's that cliche when you're on the airplane and they say when your oxygen mask comes down, put yours on first before you help other people. And I think that plays so much of a point, especially us as parents.
Yeah.
We got to be able to be to a level where we can look at ourselves in the mirror, not judge ourselves, not be upset, not be angry, not look at ourselves as failures, but say, okay, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to do better.
But here's the thing, though. Like, one of the reasons, for example, one of the reasons why some people are sick isn't because of the absence of a cure, right?
Facts.
It's because of the presence of a misdiagnosis.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it's difficult for me to
say that one more time.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why some people are sick isn't because no cure exists. It's because the sickness they have has been misdiagnosed.
Yeah.
And in a similar way, it's hard to try to like fix something about yourself that you are unaware of, or that you're labeling something else.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yo, I'm just brutally honest.
Yeah.
It's like, well, most
I think the first thing is reason because they're sick because they put themselves in certain situations.
Yeah,
that
too.
Well,
that
yeah,
too.
true.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm saying is like, if that's if your life is a certain way,
right?
Yeah.
It's hard for you like to go back again. No offense,
right?
But the little pushback. Yeah. It's hard to fix something you're unaware of.
Oh,
right?
Like all the time. Exactly.
Like
exactly.
I hear people say, I'm brutally honest. I say, well, many people I meet that you would say I'm brutally honest. Yeah. They're more committed to brutality than they are to honesty.
But let me hit you with this though.
Right.
Okay. So when it's hard for them or with that misdiagnosis.
Because you can't see yourself.
Right. You can't. Right. However, you're going to continue seeing the same problems. You're going to continue seeing the same symptoms. You're going to continue seeing the same issues. And at some point, you got to say, damn, it's me. Yeah. At some point, you have to be like, okay, why does this continuously happen? It's not me, it's them.
I think at times some people can see this.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I say that is like this, because I can have a glimpse. Like if I look in the mirror, I can see myself, right? But I can't see all of myself. Like I can see my face in the mirror, but I can't see the back of my head in the mirror.
Right.
I can see my depending on how tall the mirror is or how many mirrors are around, I still can't see underneath my shirt. You know what I mean? Like, and so in a way, my point is this: like we all have blind spots, and those things that you can see, hopefully you can address those things. But we need a community of people to help us see. Dad, it's like you're a barber. I can't tell you how many times in my own house I tried to cut my own hair, and it's been abysmal, completely terrible, right? Like, however, I'm looking at the front of my head. I can't see the back of my head.
Right.
And so you know what I've done? I will wear a hat. I was trying to clean myself up as much as I can.
Right.
But I have to ask my wife or somebody else, hey, can you get the back of my head? You know, in a similar way when it comes to how we perceive of ourselves, I can see certain problems as problems. But if we don't have people around us to see, like, the thing you're ignoring is the thing you can't see.
That was what I was going to next. You know ignoring. Sometimes you ignore your problem. You know you have it, but you ignore it.
It ain't.
Well, we don't see
you can't even ignore it that long because the problem is still going to be there.
Yeah.
And so, okay.
Some people do.
The way I break things down, man, and this is how I go throughout my whole life. Internal and external. Right. It always starts there with me, one way or the other.
Right.
And say, you got all these problems that's going on, and you can't look at yourself internally, the problems are still going to be there. These external problems that are not being fixed, or whatever is wrong with you is causing those problems, you got to look at yourself and say, okay, it's me. Because no matter where I go, that same problem happens. You know, you in a different relationship, same problem. You know, it doesn't matter the person you with if y'all still breaking up from the same issues.
Yeah.
It ain't them.
The problem is, though, if I don't have, and this is not to harp on this point, but like, if we don't have a high degree of, I would say, self-awareness, right?
Yes.
But also a community of people to help you see things about yourself that you can't see.
Right,
the
right.
Thing about, the good thing about friends, good friends, is that they could see you with new eyes.
Yeah.
So the thing that is you're seeing is like, they're going back to the haircut. Yo, I ask my wife sometimes, how do I look?
Yeah.
Right.
She can say, you look amazing, babe.
She can say that.
Killed it.
Yeah.
Right.
But then my friends, some of my guy friends, could see me and be like, yo, your joint, man, crooked, bro. You know what I mean?
Facts.
So that just goes to show, as men, you talking about fathers, right?
Yeah.
As men, we need other men.
You need
we need
both.
other people in our lives that can help us see what we can't see about ourselves.
Well, you know what?
And when a behavior has become entrenched, like it's just part of your DNA, so to speak.
Yeah, you got to get out of that.
You can't see that.
Yeah.
And so that's my point about the misdiagnosis thing.
Oh, yeah, it's true.
I can see certain aspects of a problem, but if I can't see that this problem really comes from this deeper thing that I can't address, then I'm fixing the symptoms, but I'm never really getting to the cause.
Yeah.
And so
I think you need both.
We need people to help us.
You got to have that high self-awareness, and you need the friends to help you correct that too, because your friends are becoming your support group.
That's true.
That's another thing I was gonna get onto is what I've noticed about fatherhood and kind of what we're missing is something I've learned from watching like motherhoods is the fact that our camaraderie is not as deep as motherhood's camaraderie. You feel me?
What do you mean by camaraderie?
Like how mothers stick together. They see each other, and I got it because the females, they do have more of that nurturing nature to each other. But for men in fatherhood, the camaraderie is not as promoted as much as it should. Like us right now, as fathers, having a conversation.
Yeah.
How many times have you seen that happen throughout the year, 5 years, a decade? How many times have you seen fathers get together and just talk about their kids?
Yeah.
You know? I mean, and actually, like, enjoy it, man. Show each other pictures of your kids. Like, I have a friends group. I have a male friends group. It's like 9 of us, man. Childhood friends that I grew up with. And we sit there and we talk about each other's kids all the time, man. Kids graduating, kids being born, kids having birthdays coming up, Christmas gifts. And I think that's what, as fatherhood, we need to have that camaraderie, man. Because we talk about being men all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, we don't talk about, husbands. We don't talk about fatherhood. We don't talk about those things that make us who we are at our core, because we can't be warriors 24/7.
Yeah.
We're not out there. We are out there fighting these battles, but when we come home, we need to have these people who we can let our guard down with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we need to have those people that say, hey, I messed up today. Can you help me out? You got some advice for me? You know what I mean? Like that type of thing, that type of camaraderie. Like, I'm having problems with my kid. What you recommend?
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons why that's the case, man, is like the context that vulnerability thrives in is where a person knows that it can be fully exposed, but also be fully loved.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then also be fully known, fully exposed, or better yet, fully known, fully exposed, fully loved, and then equipped for change.
Yeah.
Right?
Judgment free.
Right.
Yeah.
Judgment free, of course.
That's important.
Like, we need to be able to have that kind of vulnerability. But if our understanding of manhood is based on doing rather than being, then you'll always be trying to work to meet this undefined doing, right? But the reality is, I think the biblical or Christian worldview is the only place you get this, where doing flows from being.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, who you are produces what you do.
Yeah.
Right?
It's in your actions. It
Right?
shows.
But in the world we live in, everything is achievement based. So it's what you do defines
you
who you
results.
are, which is false.
Yeah.
Like, it's not only false, but it's a burden. Who can live up to that? Like, who can live up to the standard that says, if being a man means getting money, so am I not a man
because I don't have $1 million? Yeah,
right. Being a man.
What is being a man?
Right.
What is?
What would you say? I know you asking the question.
Yeah. No, I'm just listening to y'all. I like to hear y'all talk. But
see, that's what I specialize in right there.
Yeah.
What?
It's just helping men figure that out.
Yeah.
Because you have to figure out what masculinity is for you, what it means to you. Your masculinity ain't gonna be the same as mine. Yours ain't gonna be the same as mine, but they could be parallel.
So let me ask the question: when you say masculinity, do you mean? So I'm seeing. Let's think about it like this.
Yeah.
I can give you definition. That's one thing.
Right.
Application is another thing.
Whole nother thing.
So when you say like masculinity, my masculinity won't look like your masculinity. What I'm hearing is your application of masculine, like being a man, your masculine application will look different. You may be a painter, you may be a barber, you may be a doctor,
exactly.
You may be a boxer, you may be but I can't say because you're not a boxer, you're not a man.
You're not a man, right?
But
right.
I think what Leon is asking though, like, what is a man?
Right.
Not what you do, because what you do can't define. It's so diverse. The doing.
Exactly. It's not a one size fits all.
That's what I'm saying. But what is the being? What does it mean? What is a man?
But that's what I'm saying. Because people say a real man does this, a real man does that.
But that's not true. None of that is ever true. But the
that's
whole
why I
thing
asked y'all because I hate when
when
people say that.
what a real man is, what do you stand for? What do you value? What are you willing to protect? What are you willing to build? You know? And of course, let's think about this in more of the positive concepts. Because you can always turn that into the negative concepts. Like a man destroys things, a man burns things down. That's not true. A man creates, he builds, he sets rooms, he sets the environment for things to thrive in.
Interesting.
You know? And that's where, if you think about it in the positive concepts, that's what a man should strive to do. A man should strive to uphold those standards.
So, I love that. That's beautiful. but
the thing is,
there's always some big ones, some little ones.
I can tell by your deep breath.
But each man has to figure that out.
Yeah.
Each man has to figure that out for himself because you have men who are on the wrong path right now who are making all the wrong decisions.
That is true.
All the wrong decisions, and they're hurting other people.
Facts.
And so you got to look deep within yourself and say, I don't want to do that. I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to be a dark spot on society. I want to contribute.
Sure. So the reason why I love what you're saying, like underneath that though, to me, it seems as though the doing, like I said, doing comes from being.
Yeah.
Like not the other way around. So the reason why I say that is because, again, from a biblical or a Christian worldview, I believe that every person on the planet, male, female, are born and should be made, created in the image of God. The Latin word for image of God is imago Dei.
Okay.
And so that means that every human being on the planet, male, female, has inherent value, dignity, worth, purpose, intention.
Yeah.
Like you're not a man. We were talking about this about where you live, but like it's not an accident that you are a man. Right. It's not an accident that you are she is a female, et cetera, et cetera. Like there's not an accident. God has created human beings, but it says in his image. So what does it mean to be made in the image of God? I would say, based on the scriptures, like being made in God's image means that we are human beings are set apart from every other created thing. So, so not just set apart, but that being set apart is not just set apart from something, but also to something. So because we're made in God's image, the Bible teaches that God is triune. So that means that God is one being, three persons, Father, Son, Spirit. So in order for us to rightly image God, we have to show essentially being made in God's image is grassroots that shows this is what God is like. Not in what he looks like, because we're so diverse, culturally, ethnically, et cetera. But in your essence, your ontological, underneath it all, essence.
At your core.
Like we show what God is like in that. But because of sin, our ability to image or show what God is like to each other and to the rest of creation is completely fractured.
Oh, yeah.
Or broken. You know, and so that's what is toxic, right?
Yeah.
Because of sin. And so to back up a little bit though, another thing that means to be made in God's image is to be a reflection of what God is like in the world. And so you could say our first parents, Adam and Eve, were God's mirrors in Eden. Like the sun, like the moon has no light in itself. But the light from the moon reflects off of the sun. And so like us, we have no image in and of ourselves. We're made in the image of God. So a mirror has no image in itself. So when God's mirror, human beings, placed in the Garden of Eden, when looking at God, that the image of God, the reality of God, that bounces off of us to each other. So that the command for human beings to be fruitful and multiply is fill the earth with image bearers that show this is what God is like in creation, in compassion, in love, in justice, in righteousness, in fairness, and equality, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So to be a man or to be a woman, apart from those things, actually, it's impossible. But because of sin, our ability to rightly show God's image in love, compassion, vulnerability, acceptance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is fractured. So we do those things just in a crooked kind of way.
Oh,
right?
very crooked.
So going back to what you said about what does it mean to be a man? Like maleness and femaleness can't be separated from your design, like your created intent. It's to show this is what God is like. So beauty, for example, beauty being in the eye of the beholder is a lie, because beauty is truly found in the most beautiful one, God himself. But God is invisible. How can we say beauty is in the eye of the beholder? No, it's God is beautiful.
Yeah.
But we don't see him physically. And so that means that our understanding of beauty, our understanding of masculinity, femininity, has to be found in where it was created to be. What was your intention? What is God's creative intent in making us male and female? And so as a father, I'm wrestling with that all the time. And I think about how I love my kids. It's like, what do I see God doing? Well, the Bible teaches that God is Father, Son, Spirit. You get three persons, one being. So Jesus says, Father, you've always loved me. John 17, before the world began. So why can I love anyone? Because God is love, and God, the Father, has always loved his Son in the fellowship of the Spirit for all eternity. So guess what? When I love my kids, when I gotta correct my kids, I'm not flying off the handle and just abusing them.
Exactly.
Because God is love, and I'm supposed to show what he's like.
Right.
The reason me and my wife, we be beefing sometimes. We have disagreements, and our applications are different. How we apply our
and that's what
different. You know what
I
mean?
like that part as far as, and just to talk about.
I know that's real high, like lofty for some people.
Yeah, that was kind of long and deep.
But the point is, you can't be something you can't become something. When you're not rightly beholding why you were created. You don't rightly understand that. Then you'll go.
But that takes that self-awareness of learning something outside of yourself, something stronger than yourself, bigger than yourself.
Right.
That's what it takes. There's
a saying, by an old writer, A.W. Tozer. He said, the most important thing about a man is what that man thinks about God. Because that man will reproduce what he think God approves of, even if he is God. If I think I'm God, human as a man, or I live like I'm God, then who cares? Who cares about treating people with respect? I'm the man.
Yeah.
Who cares about
no
humility, being a destroyer? Like you said, I remember I watched Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and not to give it away, spoiler alert, but there's a scene at the end when one of the characters says to another character, I'm not gonna say the names. She says, "You weren't meant to be I finally see you for who you are. You weren't made to be a destroyer. You were made to be a father."
Yeah.
But that comes from someone outside of you being able to see and know what you were created for.
Yeah.
Wasn't to be a destroyer. Is to be a father, to be a builder, nurturer, a provider, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're not rightly able to do that, and if they don't see you in that context, then your creative intent will go completely out the window. Exactly. You have to make it up as you go.
You got to be able to start seeing that,
right?
Instead of just, like I said, instead of just looking at yourself, you have to see something bigger. Yeah. There is a theory that I've been working on for last couple of years. It's called survive, provide, and prosper, and it's something that our society, like all societies, have fallen into. If you want to get down to the most simple aspect of living, you take surviving. That's just your natural core-based survival skills. Whatever. Somewhere 1,000 years ago, one of your ancestors, one of yours, one of mine, didn't go jump in a river that had crocodiles in it. That's why we're here. That's why we're here right now, because one of our ancestors were like, okay, we're going to survive by not jumping in the river with crocodiles. Cool. Once you get past surviving, you have those survival skills, you get to a providing stage. Where it's not just you. You provide for your family. You got kids. I don't care. You have a pet or goldfish or something. You learn how to take care of something
you care
outside
about.
Of yourself. You know, you become a provider. Then once you get past providing stage, you get to a prosperous phase. That's where everything comes together so you can thrive. You can create a community. You can create a society. So everybody got survival skills. Everybody's got providing skills to look at each other. Everybody's got prospering skills where we can survive as a whole. And so those type of things, you have to realize there's always something bigger than yourself. And that's why when I look at fatherhood, man, you got to look at yourself like, okay, I want to create I want to help the next generation become better. And it's not even just your kids. It's just, it could be people you mentoring. You know, you real. Become a guide, you know? And that's where, for us, just in fatherhood, it's not just, you don't have to have biological kids to be a father.
That's true.
You know?
That's true.
You just got to have the idea in your head that I want to be better for someone else. I want to be better for something else, to create better, you know, to help someone else be better.
Yeah. You know, there's, I don't know if you had to say something.
No, go ahead. I'm listening.
No, I was just going to say, man, I think that's real. I think that in terms of our ability, like a few months ago, I was at a funeral. One of my best friends, actually, his father died. And me and my pops at the time, we were having this, like, back and forth, you know, like, better yet, a back and back. There was no, like, fourth. Like, he wouldn't call. Like, we had an impasse. Better yet. And
Zero-sum game.
Right, exactly, man. And his father died, and I remember talking to him and just was like, man, like, I always admired your dad because he was, you know, not just a father to you and your brother, but, like, you and your brothers and your sisters. But, like, he was like a father to the community. People needed places to stay. They were thrown out or people strung out. He'd help people get clean. He would like take people in. And he wasn't a perfect dude by no standard. But, I mean,
good heart.
Good heart, good dude. You know what I mean? And my friend said to me, he said, he was like, yeah, I appreciate you saying all those things about my dad. He said, but I think, yo, you should go to your dad and, like, just tell you. I said, what do you mean? My dad was, and I was just going in, like, my dad did this and that. He didn't do this. And, man, I'm mad because he don't do that. And he said, brother, man, you know, I love you. You're my dog. I was like, yeah. He's like, but you ever just, like, called your dad and just told him the things you appreciate about him? And I remember thinking, like, yeah, my dad wasn't the dad that was like a father to the community like this dude's dad. He wasn't. Yeah. But I can't say my dad is not he was not the best father to me that he could be. Now,
okay.
That's not saying he's a perfect dad, but who my dad could be.
Yeah, you know, the potential.
Right, now, could he have done better in some ways? Absolutely.
Yeah.
However, like, I think my friend's point was, like, you need to, as a father, it would do something in you as a father to be able to say to your father, thank you for this.
So you had your kid at the time?
Yeah. This was this year.
It's recently. Oh, okay.
In, like, March.
So did you call him?
Yeah, I did, man. We had I went to see him.
Oh, okay.
I called him, we were on the phone, and my dad's not a phone person.
Right.
Like, he'll be completely distracted.
Old school.
Right.
Yeah, old school. You know, I just popped up on. I said, "I'm in your area, near Marion." He's in Marion.
Yeah.
I was passing through, and I said, "Dad, I'm gonna just come see you." And I showed up to his house, and I was nervous because internally I had this feeling of, like, we hadn't really talked.
You know what to expect.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect.
How long has it been since y'all talked?
So, man, before that, it's probably like. Now, we'll communicate, but talk is different.
Right.
Weighty, like, let's just build, you know, like, we've never really had that, you know, like, as a pattern in our relationship. But I think one of the reasons why that was the case is, I would say, to answer your question, a couple months. But I remember saying, like, after my friend told me that, I felt immediately like a dagger to the heart, like, Dad.
That's that guilt right there.
I need to hit my dad. because I think as men,
I need to make this right.
Yeah, as men, man, we need to be able to be, like I said, fully known, fully loved. Yeah. And then prompted to change, given the tools for change. And so I think that my friend loving me and caring about me saw that me holding whatever bitterness, you know, or, like, letdowns, if you will, against my dad kept me from being the best dad I could be. Yeah. You know, and I had that conversation with my dad, you know, and he didn't respond in a way that was like, you know, you have this ideal image, like the Hallmark Channel. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just going to run into him. Dad, man. I'm sorry.
Lifetime.
You know, Lifetime story. Yeah. Oh, son, come to me. I've always loved you. And, you know, he just was like, thank you. I appreciate that.
That's that old school
But you know, I could tell that changed a different, like it removed one of the layers, barriers, if you will, in our relationship, because you can see I really appreciate him. Yeah. And then they say the older you get, you start realizing how much your parents you are. Yeah. And there's things that I'll say to my kids. I'm like, Dad, I'll be laughing. Like, my dad used to say, blah, blah, blah. Why don't say that? Because that was kind of crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
But I do see how, like, gratitude, you know.
It's important.
It's important. You know, being able to say to somebody, thank you. You shaped my life in this way.
That's a big step for some people, too.
Yeah. So how did you feel once you did that and left and...
Man, I felt like...
Processed it.
I felt like I had this image of the type of dad I wanted. Mm-hmm. But I feel like in some ways God gave me the type of dad I needed. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean that my dad's perfect in any way. My dad, to my knowledge, my dad's not a Christian, anything like that. It
made you into the man that you are now.
You know, like, there were some things about my dad that I look back on. And not just my dad, but other men in my life.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Other men. I remember one time me and my dad got into it. And he said, you always looking to these men on the corner, like not in the corner, but like these men in the streets. You know what I mean? Like our neighbors or whoever. I'm your dad. Oh. And I remember saying to him, like, as in a gentle way, I said, Dad, you know, I love you. You're my dad. I respect you. But there were some things as a kid I felt like I couldn't come to you with because you weren't the person that's going to be you're not going to be affirming. You're not going to hear me as someone that's trying to come to you and hear, like, receive wisdom from you. You'll squash me under the, like, well, you better get that out of here. Yeah. Like, you know, like,
I'm your daddy.
Yeah, I'm your dad, you know. Yeah. But I learned, but I said to my dad, there's things that I felt like I couldn't get from you, you know, that I had to get from somewhere else, or else that was going to come from a negative place. Mm-hmm. It would have been a gap in me. And I know now, zooming out years later, you know, that, like God has made us as people. This is why I went on this long thing. Like, one of our dudes was to drop breadcrumbs that you can get people to the loaf later. You know what I mean? Like, the whole thing about being made in God's image, we were made for that, to receive that kind of love, affection, acceptance, et cetera, correction, not just from our parents, but most of all from God, you know, who gives us that, provides that for us. The Bible even says that God disciplines those whom he loves. You know what I mean? Like, my father, like, it even says, earthly fathers disciplined us in ways that was fitting to them. Though painful at the time, it meant that its fruits were meant to produce wisdom. Right. You know, and so I think that for me, man, I look back on my relationship with my dad, different little friction points we've had has come from, one, our worldviews being completely different. Oh, yeah. But then, two, I've learned to appreciate, even though we're different. Yeah, generation's different. Yeah. But learning, like they say, one of my good friends once said, yo, you need to reject the rebelliousness of youth and accept rebelliousness of the youth, and you need to reject the stubbornness of older people, if you will, because we have to learn from each other to reach the culture, to engage the culture. Agreed. And so I learned that, man, like, yeah, like I can be obstinate, I could be unforgiving, unloving, but again, from a Christian standpoint, I've received infinitely more love, infinitely more acceptance, infinitely more forgiveness, infinitely more charity than I could possibly fathom in Christ. Yeah. So my response is just like that mirror, to reproduce, even a fractured way, exactly what I've received into in my relationship with my dad. Okay. So there's beef we still have, this tension, this things that I wish I could say to him that I haven't said up until this point, but I'm trusting that in God's timing, those things will happen. And if not, that God will give me other brothers and younger men that I could pour into. Right. Yeah. It's funny to see how quickly time moves and you become the older dude.
Fast, man.
Like,
fast.
Real quick. You know what I mean?
So I want to piggyback off something earlier when you were talking about just now, like how there were areas where you couldn't go to your dad. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And for me as a father, I'm probably for some of y'all too, what things that make you better as a man and having that self-awareness is knowing that you can still provide for your kids, even if it's not directly from you.
Right.
And what I mean by, like, if your child is going through something that you don't have experience in, it's still your job.
Let me interrupt you real quick, brother.
Okay.
Let me say, I appreciate the fact that you're not limiting provision to finances.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Because I think that's dope, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
you catch the nuance. You can't provide something for your kid. That doesn't mean financial. Like,
exactly.
You are still a father and a dope dad.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have all the money.
It ain't about the money,
resources,
man.
Right?
It's not about child
Continue,
support.
my man. I'm sorry.
But I was just gonna add, like, to the fact that, let's say your child is struggling with something that's not in your area of expertise.
Sure.
However, it's still your job as a parent to go and find your child, the help they need, and it could be from another person.
Yeah.
And the main thing, one of the biggest common things about that is therapy.
Right.
You're not a therapist. I'm not a therapist. Neither one of us is therapists.
Sure,
but if your child is struggling, it's your job to get out there, research, find some therapists in that area, and help you get your child straight.
I think that's real. That's true. But I think going back to what I was saying before, we become what we behold.
Right.
And I think that generations prior, especially in our community, Black community,
Yeah.
the idea of seeking external help in terms of therapy is seen as like a misnomer. Like,
Yeah.
nah.
It's a bad stigma. With
Right.
Yeah.
Leon was the therapist. The barber was the therapist. You know what I mean? Like the dude on the block with the beer in his hand, he's the therapist.
Yeah.
Which is false. You know what I mean? But
The bartender.
Right, the bartender, right?
Yeah.
Confessions in a bottle. You know what I mean?
Facts.
But at the same time, I think it takes a certain degree of not only, I think you keep saying self-awareness, but I think it takes a community. The Western mind says, I think, therefore I am, right? Which is kind of place the onus is on personal thought rather than communal input. But the Eastern mind or the African mind at one point would say, the community is, therefore I am. So you can't see yourself as, no individual is bigger than the community. And so it's not simple. I keep going back to this, and I'm not trying to be corrective in any way. I'm just saying, self-awareness is important, yes.
Yeah.
But self-awareness coupled with communal awareness actually makes a better person.
You're right.
As long as you have a
100%.
healthy community.
The only problem is we ain't got healthy communities right now.
Right.
And it had to start in the home, and then it goes out. It's got to
Some of that
start
means
with
shaping
you.
that too, right? Like
100%.
being
you
for
have
others what
to.
you never had yourself.
That's where we at now.
Right.
That's where we at. We are becoming those men and trying to shape what we didn't have, what we missed, what we didn't like.
And then sometimes too,
unlearning those negative behaviors.
Yeah, and sometimes too, when you think about like my grandfather was born 1928. My wife's grandfather was born 1910.
Okay.
Like he lived a long time. He's dead now, but which means my wife's grandfather was a sharecropper. A sharecropper.
Okay.
Which means his father more than likely was a slave. So, talking about our community and self-awareness and all these type of things, we have to understand, like, historically speaking, our community has not been given that as a lineage, something you're passing down from one generation to the next. So we inherit and receive like historical and interpersonal familial trauma that we don't even have language for, like in our community.
Right.
And so I think when we say self-awareness, that is important. I think we're in an age where, or a time in history where, thank God, we have access to certain things. But my father couldn't give me what he never received, right?
Oh yeah.
And so his father couldn't give him what he never received. Like my family originally, I'm from Philly, like I said, but my family, my father's family is from Florida, Sanford, Florida.
Okay.
And my mother's family is from Saluda, South Carolina. But they moved to the north during the Great Migration. The migration between 1910. In 1975, there were 3 waves of migrations from the south from the north to the west to the whatnot to pursue racial oppression, seek economic opportunity, or just have a better way of life. A good book that deals with that is called "The Warmth of Other Suns" by Isabel Wilkerson. And but
that's on my books list.
Right. But that's the thing. Like our families are byproducts of the things that have shaped them. Like I said earlier, you become what you behold. And so I think it's important for us to give looking years later, I'm 35 now, knowing what I now know, I look at my dad with a little more compassion.
Yeah,
because of the fact that
you empathize, you relate a little bit,
right? Like that doesn't excuse.
Because there was things that he couldn't explain to you,
right.
But now when you've gone through some experiences, and you're like, okay, I see he couldn't talk about it,
right.
But I understand.
Like our grandparents, right? Some of my grandparents my grandfather never told me about anything that was like when he was growing up.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. My father even barely talks about some of the stuff that he seen when he was growing up. But it's my responsibility to, as I've learned, and our responsibility, I would say, as we learn, as we grow and mature, and we in our thinking, et cetera, and we learn more about our family's history, and then, that's why I think people in our community. Let me say this to the viewer: the people in our community, members of our community, we need to get serious about reading and learning history. You know, they say the only thing that we use, sadly, they say the thing that we usually learn from history is that we usually don't learn from history, right? And if you don't know your history, you're going to repeat it. So I think that when it comes to our community, we need to learn, why is it that grandpa was like this? Why is it that mom's is like this? What made my mom resort to drugs? What made my grandmother be on alcohol? And what made my grandfather? What made these people be like what they are? It's internal decisions.
You're right.
But it's also social conditions that produce the people that we've received.
But you know what that is, though? That's you being aware.
But there's a thing. Here's the thing. I think that there's a certain I always say this. The person I'm engaging right now, you, and you're engaging me, I'm engaging you, is the person that the real us, underneath all the layers and all of the baggage, all of the trauma, all of that, has had to become to engage the world as they've received it.
Okay. I can see that.
And so that doesn't mean everything that person is and says and does is right, but they're protecting something really vulnerable, the real them, underneath all of that stuff.
Right.
There's a certain aspect of who you are that I will never know, that he will never know, and vice versa. However, I think that over time and with maturity, hopefully, and with community, and I would even say with understanding God's intention for your creation. I don't mean you're gonna get some money. I don't mean that. I mean, what is God's creative intent?
Yeah, what are we doing this for?
Right.
Yeah,
you get to that, it's over time, hopefully, and the biblical word for that for the Christian is sanctification. God through His Spirit is making you more like what you will be in the end, what the believer will be like in the end. But over time, those layers are getting peeled back, and it's you start realizing I don't have to be so angsty. I don't have to be the main one talking every time I jump into a room. I don't have to be so angry. I don't have to snap every time somebody says something I don't like. Whatever. I don't have to be that because I'm learning more of what I was actually created for.
Exactly.
And so I think that as we engage our families and family members and whatnot, our kids as fathers, we have to be able to see I snap at my kids sometimes. I'm too sharp with my words sometimes. But there comes a time where not just seeing my kids seeing me fail, if you will, in life circumstances, but fail them. Sometimes I have to go to my often we have a regular practice of confession and repentance to our kids.
Really?
What do you mean by failing your kids?
For example, I just said a moment ago, sometimes I'm too sharp with my kids. I'll give you an example, a practical example, real one. Earlier today.
Oh, that's real recent.
Right, real recent. I'm not saying 50 years ago, but that's another thing too. As men, I think as fathers, we want to be good at is own your failures in the moment.
It's important.
Right?
It's important.
Rather than 10 years later, your kid come back to you and say, remember when you said that to me in the store? It hurt me because of blah, blah, blah. But again, that takes people in a family unit, I would suggest, my wife being sometimes come to me and say, you really hurt her when you said that. Yeah. So an example of that would be in my life has been today. My wife's pregnant, and sometimes my kids, they want to jump all over her and hug her. And my son, he's short. He's
right at the stomach.
Right at the stomach. He just tackles her. She's really protective of me.
Yeah.
And I had to tell him, son, we were in a grocery store earlier.
House.
Right, we were in a grocery store earlier, man. And my son was trying to show my wife something in the store that he wanted. She's like, mommy, mommy, mommy. And she was walking away. She had passed him. And we have another thing in our home. We said, don't let me get beyond you. You come to me.
Okay.
But that's a protective thing. You shouldn't be behind me. We together. Something can happen to you.
I'm telling you.
He ran up to me.
It was arm distance for me when I was a kid.
Right. He would like come. He grabbed something what he had and was running, charging to my wife. And I just looked at her eyes. She looked at me. I looked at her, and she just like frowned.
Oh man, that good communication.
Bracing herself. He's about to tackle the mess. And I put my hand on his shoulder to stop him. Boom! And he tripped and stumbled.
Yeah.
But I wasn't trying to hurt him. I was trying to protect her.
Right.
And you hurt me. You hurt my leg. You pushed me down. Yeah. And in the moment, I was like, no, I didn't push you down. You was running to the store. Yeah. And I was right. Like for what I did. I thought I was right. And we were walking, and he was like not trying to hold my hand in the store.
Yeah, he was upset with you.
He was upset.
Yeah,
he was mad,
upset with you.
Yeah. And we were buying grapes, right? We had the cash register, and they had grapes on the side. And I looked at my son and said, Alex, Daddy did not mean to hurt you. I was wrong for the way that I grabbed you that way. But you were charging at Mommy. And I don't think you even meant to hurt her. You wouldn't have meant to hurt her. But my love for Mommy and my love for you means that I'm protecting you from hurting her. I'm also protecting you from hurting yourself.
Yeah.
But in that, I hurt you.
Yeah.
Please forgive me. Daddy was wrong.
See, that's clear communication right there.
Right. Man. But that takes a certain, like, when I was younger,
exactly.
Kids ain't right.
Yo,
kids is always wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Don't even talk. Kids are seen, not heard.
Seen, not heard. Yeah.
So,
but the reality is too, going back to what I said earlier, form and fill.
Yeah.
Like if I don't give my kids a category for something, I can't expect them to live like in the world.
Yeah, man, they're gonna struggle. They're gonna struggle.
And so
they're gonna fill it with the wrong things.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So there's times where like not just in that I had to, Daddy, sorry, I'll try to be more mindful.
Yeah,
but
you also explain to him like
exactly.
You did.
This is what you did.
Because these kids, because they're acting.
The impulse.
They're impulsing, and then you got to explain, hey, you can't do X, Y, Z.
Right.
This is why I did X, Y, Z.
Right.
So they don't just look at you coming down on them.
And there's other times where it's not so cut and dry. You did this.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes I'll be flat out wrong.
Fatherhood is fun, ain't it?
One time I disciplined. So one thing that we do to our we discipline our kids. Physical discipline is the very last thing.
Yeah.
But we also don't. Daddy don't take no mess. but we have this thing in our home. No nonsense. No nonsense.
Yeah.
But there's times we have to discipline our kids. And one thing we always do is before we discipline them, we say, this is what I'm expecting of you. Do you understand? And they'll say, yes, sir, we understand. Both my kids, do you understand? Yes. So when I come back, I'm expecting you to have this. When I leave, I'm going to give you this much time to clean this room. When I come back, the room should be clean. Do you understand?
As a standard.
Yeah. Yes, I understand. Mm-hmm. I'll come back. The room isn't clean. Discipline time.
Yeah.
I'm not giving no warnings. I'm not giving no second chances. None of that. Because instant obedience, delayed obedience is disobedience.
It is.
And so what I do though, it's not always, now it depends on the circumstance, right?
Yeah.
But when we discipline them, we bring them into a designated spot every time. Mm-hmm. And we tell them, I'm usually the one that does it. I'll say, Sophia or Alex, this is what you've done.
Right.
And they know because they've understood.
Yep.
You
information
you understood, right?
Yeah.
This is what you've done. This is what Daddy said. You disobeyed what Daddy said. I want them to trust my word.
They need to.
And I'm going to do what I'm going to say. But because God is that way.
Yeah.
Like, He said, God says a thing. You have to trust His word, and I'm laying before you a choice. You can obey or you can disobey.
Yeah, and there will be consequences.
There's blessings of obedience, consequences of disobedience. That's all the way, especially if you read the Old Testament. God is like, I will do this positive thing if you obey. I'll do this negative thing if you disobey. But both are for your good.
Right.
Right? And so I'll say to my kids, I used to just, before this, didn't I say that? And then they're left in their shame, they're left in their hurt, and no, go to your room. But then they
don't trust you.
Right. But then I learned, I say, now this is what we do. This is, I'll say, do you understand? They'll agree. If they disobey, I'll bring them to the spot when it's time to be disciplined. If it's a disciplinable thing, I'll say, this is what Daddy said. This is what you did. Because of that, you're going to be disciplined.
Right.
And I tell them how many times I'm going to discipline. I'm going to spank them. I'll say, Daddy's gonna. And my son was like, how many times?
You
Daddy,
you're getting the whole agenda. You got the agenda set up, the itinerary.
Them, right? That's discipline. It's training.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll say, Daddy's gonna spank you 3 times. And then I'll do it 3 times. This is not like light. This is hard spanks. 3 times. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
And afterwards, they were crying. And they would my daughter, get away from me. My daughter's scared. And I pull her close to me and say, Daddy, his love for you never left.
Yeah.
My affection for you is just the same as it was before I had to spank you. As a matter of fact, I'm with you in this. I'm enduring this with you. Then I'll say, and after she's crying, my son or daughter is crying, I'm holding them. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm crying because it hurts me more than it hurts you. Mm-hmm. It don't look like it when you just beating me from a distance with a belt. But like we do that, and I hold them close, and I'm like, and I'll reiterate my love for them. I love you. I'm for you. I'm with you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And another thing I say, this is to close it.
Yeah.
I'll pray with them. I'll pray for them, and then right before we leave, I say, I'm not going to hold this against you. I'm not going to bring it back up.
Yeah.
But your disobedience, this is the response to your disobedience. Then I'll say this: Daddy and Mommy will never, ever, ever discipline you again if you only obey.
And what you think about some people that don't believe in spankings and
well,
I know you're gonna go to the Bible and say spare the
no, I think physical discipline is of some benefit.
They don't spare that rod.
I think physical discipline is of some benefit. I think I get what some parents mean. The other thing that I do is like help counsel families, and one of the things that I understand, everything doesn't deserve a discipline. That's right. Every disobedient act doesn't require physical discipline. Yeah, well, my kids, they respond well to like routine and discipline, and also understand giving them grace at times. Everything doesn't require discipline. But like I said before, there are sometimes I should say, like I've had to discipline my kids. I've disciplined my kids and I went too far. I disciplined them out of anger or out of more of it is sometimes it's not that they've done something wrong, it's that I'm offended. And
you gotta take ego out of it.
Right, you have to take as much as you can, you have to acknowledge I'll bring something to the table that can make this all bad. You know what I mean? Like both of us, my kids are bringing their behavior, I'm bringing my own, and my wife is constantly reminding me, you are the adult. like don't let them, their behavior make you act out of character. Yeah. You have to be consistent. And I'm like, you know what? That's true. But there are times I have to confess to my kids, like, Daddy was wrong. I shouldn't have, said what I said. I shouldn't have done what I've done. And thankfully at this point they're kids, and so kids have a short memory. I love you, Daddy. Or I still love you, Daddy. It's okay.
For the most part, they can remember you saying, owning up to it, apologizing.
And like, think about the ratio, right? I don't want my too fars to outweigh my graces.
Oh yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because they will remember that.
Remember that. You always do the craziest thing, and then you say I'm sorry. Like that's supposed to change.
And they ain't gonna come to you because they gonna expect you to wild out.
Right. And and I want to, cultivate trust because I believe God does that. Like we can trust His word because of His track record of trustworthiness. Okay. You know what I mean? I always tell my wife and other young men that I'm building with, kind of discipling, I tell them like, yo, you want to build up a track record of faithfulness that people can trust. They can look back on your character and say, this dude is, I can trust Tim because Tim is like this. Yeah. And when he steps out of character, he's quick to acknowledge it. But that just goes to show, like, you cannot live out of an identity you don't actually have. You're right. You know what I mean?
And I think for men, it's good for us to build up, a level of where the trust is so high that if you try to lie, people don't believe you.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Right. And that's next level right there. Because you don't want to be the other way around where all you do is lie. And then when you try to tell the truth, people don't believe you.
It's like the boy who cried wolf, right?
Yeah, you don't want to be on that side of the spectrum, man.
And we want to cultivate, that kind of trust. And that happens through everyday, ordinary, regular, mundane things. Like being where you say you're going to be, do what you say you're going to do. And that's just faithfulness, you know what I mean? Like faithfulness demands that when no one's forcing you, what will you be?
Yeah.
And I think as a father, I want to actually model that. Like, who are you? And not just who you are. I think for men, for fathers, we always have to ask ourselves, who are we becoming? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And without that, then we're actually, without addressing that, who am I becoming? It's like you're always being made into something's image, the image of something.
You got to be mindful, too, of the people that are watching you.
Yeah.
You are an example.
That's true.
You know, especially men with sons. Mm-hmm. You know, you want to set a standard and precedent that your son is going to look at you and be like, I want to be like that.
Yeah.
I want to have that. Now, when I'm an 80s kid, so I grew up like in those
in the Stone Age.
It'll be out like that.
Tell us about Fred.
Yeah.
Come on, tell us about the dinosaurs and
what I'm gonna
walking
get
with your
on.
feet. Oh, okay.
What I'm gonna get on is like, because I grew up in a single parent home, and
with your mom,
I grew up just with my mom's.
Okay, gotcha.
But I grew up with a lot of TV dads too, and black TV dads back in the '80s and the '90s was where it was at.
Right,
you know,
right.
Uncle Phil, you know, Carl Winslow. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It's just. I always admired, because I looked at those two because they kind of stood out to me back in the 90s. Mm-hmm. Like Carl Winslow was always loving, caring, but he was funny. Mm-hmm. He was that dad who would laugh with you. And then Uncle Phil was always like loving, firm.
Yeah.
And he was like naive. Don't play games with me, but if you need me, I'm in your corner.
Right,
I got your back. And so I kind of like loved watching those two types of fatherhoods grow up, and I was like, man, I want my type of fatherhood, to kind of strive, like to have that.
And that's the thing about growing up in a single parent home situation, when you don't have an actual person to measure yourself up to and against. Yeah. You begin to develop like a composite sketch in your mind.
Yeah, man,
like
you try your best.
These pieces of different type of men that you've seen, men that you've been around, things you've seen on TV, movies, media, culture guys down the block. Yeah. You know, when I was growing up, I had a dude that lived on my street, Tim. He actually was a DJ. Yeah. And he used to used to take me to parties with him and let me set up turntables and DJ. Like he used to teach me how to DJ, how to blend, how to do all that stuff. And he got me into hip hop, rapping and stuff like that. But I looked up to him not as a father, but like a big brother. Right. You know, I have big brothers, but they weren't real close to me relationally because of how families and single parent homes. The dynamic was different, right? Yeah. And so there was a lot of dudes in my life that I look at like my dad was the center, but these guys filled in the blanks. You know what I mean? Like my dad was the picture, and these guys kind of colored within that picture. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's true. Like the adage is, you know, it takes a village to raise a child. Yeah. You know, and I think it takes a village to make a man.
It does, bro.
So, yeah,
it does.
Well, we go end it right here. You know, people's attention spans are short. You already know that. And y'all can see that I didn't say much at all because this guy right here, I know he likes to talk. You know, we talk a lot, and I like to listen to him. I like to listen to him.
Man,
but in closing, what would y'all, as fathers, and what would y'all give to other fathers, young fathers, fathers who are trying to do the right thing? What would y'all give them?
I think for me, man, it's kind of what I touched on earlier is get out your own way. You know, don't block yourself from trying to be a better father. Right. Or a better man. Mm-hmm. You got some things that's going on, some unresolved issues, some unresolved traumas. Get help, you know? Try to get help to figure out how you can get past those traumas so they don't become obstacles and they just don't block you and your family and things like that, or your community, you know?
Yeah.
So. And give them something short, not too long, not hours.
Nah, yo, I appreciate y'all letting me come and chop it up with y'all.
Right.
What I would tell fathers, especially young fathers, is one for younger, one for older. For the younger, like get into the lives of some older fathers, some dudes who have been there. Making sure that you can check what you're doing up against other people. Because we all have something we type of person we ascribe to be, a desire to be. Yeah. But if you don't have a good model, you know, you're going to only reproduce the same type of stuff that you've experienced. And two, for older fathers, I would say, if your kids are older, consider how you can actually, you know, pour into some younger dude. Not only that, but like how your kids still need you, even if they're adults. You know what I mean? Like,
it never stops.
There's so many times that I wished that I could just have a conversation, with my dad or older other men, like, man, I'm processing this. Yeah. I'm wrestling with this financial thing. I'm thinking about this with my wife. We had a conflict over this thing. And thankfully, I got a lot of older men in my life that can help me with that. But as an older man, look out for the young dudes that's trying to find their way. And maybe if you ain't got it all together, you still could be a good example, possibly to them.
That's what I was talking about earlier. We gotta have that camaraderie, man.
Yeah, we gotta be able to
bounce off each other.
100%,
100%.
That was kind of short.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah.
But as y'all can see, I usually have my phone propped up. I ain't even had no questions prepared for this guy right here, because he can go.
Oh man, I appreciate you.
I would say this: make sure you, as a father, and you have kids, make sure you tell your kids you love them.
100%.
Make sure they know that you love them.
That.
Not just
Leon came in and
not just showing it.
Stole the thunder.
Hey, he said the most important part.
Not just showing action, but verbally, make sure you say "I love you," and they know you. I mean, every day, morning, night, whenever it comes to mind, make sure they know that you love them.
Yeah. For sure.
So, how can they find you, Maurice?
Yeah, man, you can find me. I don't really have a whole bunch of platforms. I'm a regular dude, man.
Okay.
And so you can find me on my Facebook.
Right.
Who does that?
Go for
Facebook
it, man.
Anymore?
Give me your last name.
Yeah, Wilson.
You call me
Maurice.
old. I don't have a Facebook.
That's what I'm saying. I use it for the old folks.
You got MySpace too?
Got a Black Planet.
Oh.
You can find me. If anybody wants to chop it up or learn, like build off anything you heard me or me say, you can reach me. Just email me. I love to meet and folks and build, especially if you're in the area. You can reach me at Maurice Wilson. That's MauriceWilson 215 I'm thinking about starting one of these myself. You inspire me.
Go for it, man. Go for it.
To just chop it up and just something where we can just build with one another. So,
for sure.
Right. Well, there you have it for another hour and some change episode. I think he got the longest run right now of the Impel Forward podcast. For sure. Stay tuned for more.
Yeah, peace.
If you like what you saw, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Impel Forward podcast.